Good morning.
Good morning. I forgot to put the microphone on.
Yeah. You know, that whole, hey, you ready thing? And
Yeah,
then you're like,
and I was like, yeah,
I'm
totally ready.
man.
Mentally.
Yeah. Remind me not to go skydive jumping. Skydive. I even changed the word
Skydive
subconsciously
jumping.
to skydive. When I do it with you, that's what it's called.
Because that's what's gonna happen.
Here's
It's
the skydiving.
unfortunate.
Cheers.
Yeah, cheers.
Hey, happy Tuesday,
Need
everybody.
to get some of this swill down. It's actually not swill. It's quite nice.
Tastes just like bean water.
Bean juice.
I'd love thinking back on history and just like, who was the first one to do that thing? You know what I mean?
Yeah. My sister usually tells some story with coffee about goats getting excited in the mountains and the farmer finding they were eating coffee beans and then taking some of that and somehow turning it into a drink. And
just to be clear, the goats were eating it and then digesting it, and what was left afterwards is what they were picking up.
Well, no, that wasn't the story she told.
I think
that's probably.
I think that's what happened. I think that's what happened.
Oh man, yeah, like that is really gross.
Because
you know what? Let's go dig through this poop and then make coffee out of it.
You know, there are times when it's not worth fact checking just because it's too fun. And this is one of them. I'm not going to fact check this. But it makes sense because coffee is actually contained within kind of like a cherry. Think of it almost like the pit of a cherry. And so it makes sense that, hey, they chew the cherry or whatever, they get all the fruit off, and then they digest but the beans just pass through, or maybe they just swallow it. I don't know. Or maybe they pick around the cherry and spit it out. But I like the idea that they digested it. And honestly, if it didn't happen with coffee, I know for sure it happened with other stuff. I've heard of that type of thing where you're letting the animal do the work for you and then you use it. And it's like, oh, you think it's so gross and so weird, but then it's like, hey, it works. They didn't have to use any machines. Like, come on, this was like hundreds or thousands of years ago. And it's like, guess what? How they were making the fire that they boiled the water on? They were using cow turds. So it's just like doubling down,
Yeah. I can understand the dried cow chips that you're using to burn when you're out on the prairie and there's no trees around. I get that. It's the idea that you're going to go, hey, look, there's some poop. I mean, most people have a sort of a natural reaction built in of like, oh, like that stuff has all sorts of weird bacteria and toxins in it, and I probably shouldn't touch it. And then
maybe after like 1850.
You think so? You think that before that people were just like smearing their own poop all over themselves?
I don't know, man.
I'm sure, it was like a regimen for beauty.
I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised.
Because people are weird. Because I was just thinking there has to just be that one guy that didn't quite get the behavioral kind of evolutionary thing that says don't play with poop.
Right.
And he's the one that's over there going like, look at these.
Well,
look at what I found, Mom.
The greatest thing, I was just watching Explained the other day. You ever watched that series?
Yeah, on Netflix.
Yeah. It's pretty cool. For those of you who haven't seen it, Explained is a series on Netflix where each episode's about a different topic, but they explain something. Oftentimes something that's either controversial or topical for the time. As I was going through, I was like, oh, look, they did one on pandemic in 2019. Good timing. Just before. Like, what would happen with the new pandemic? I bet their producers were like, yes. And then I could tell, I'm pretty sure they updated the description to say the words in 2019 because a lot of people probably thought. But anyways, the one I was watching on there was about sweeteners and sugar, and it was there's a big war on sugar, at least over the last 10 years. It's like people like, don't do sugar, it's gonna kill you, it's gonna cause all the problems. And so this was all the problems. It's like, oh, it's gonna kill you, and then it's gonna cause all the other problems too.
Oh yeah,
just
all of them.
Like you're trying to go diving. Oh, well, I can't even say it right
exactly. Now. I was just thinking about that. It won't put on your backpack for you. Yeah. It's gonna eat through the straps.
It's gonna eat through the straps, exactly. But anyway, so they were talking about artificial sweeteners, and it's like, oh well, how did these come about? And that's one of the fun things when you look at the history of certain inventions, how they came about. Well, with artificial sweeteners, it was literally not one, but at least 3 times the different sweeteners where some chemist or someone who worked in a factory happened to lick their fingers after work or in the lunchroom or whatever. And they're like, oh, that's pretty sweet, but I'm eating coffee beans that came from a goat, so it can't be from there. Oh, I must have brought that home from the factory. And it was great because in the episode, they said it the first time, and then they said it the second time, and then they said it the third time, and then they had someone like ask, like, does this happen all the time? It's like, well, no, not anymore. Now there's a little stricter controls, but back in the day, that's how things happen. It's just like, huh. And just to be clear on the ones I'm talking about, one is aspartame, which is like sweet and low. The other one, which I'm not remembering the chemical for, saccharin, was that equal or Splenda?
I think that was sweet and low, and then I think aspartame was equal.
Okay. Well, anyways, we're mixing up exactly which one's which, but basically it was like, huh. Oh, sweet. Oh, sweet. Yeah. There's fun little invention stories that I've heard over the years too. Like Post-it notes, a complete accident. The guy was trying to make something else, and was like, huh. And I don't remember if it was specifically an adhesive or not, but it's like, this isn't sticky, but it is.
All we have to do is lick it.
What could this be useful in? Yeah, and now they're everywhere.
What was another weird thing that back in the day, things that they did was, have you heard of the radium girls?
No.
So these were
actually
girls that worked in a factory that actually they used to have some sort of glowing substance that they would paint onto the hands of watches. And so that your watch dial would glow. And so what this was basically a radioactive substance. But the ladies that were painting it on, to keep the brush at a fine point, they would lick the brush. Well, it happened to have this like radium on it. Yeah. And so they would end up, their mouths would be glowing with all this stuff in there. Of course, it causes cancer and it's horrible. But that was how you knew a radium girl, was that she would have this weird toxic glowing mouth. But of course, at the time, they didn't know it was toxic. It was just a weird thing that they would do.
Your tongue's glowing. Yeah. Like, hey, your kid has two heads. Oh.
I know. I don't know why. So strange.
That's great. Welcome to What the Hell is Water. Today is Tuesday, November 16th. I'm Reed Garcia.
This is Ryder Richards.
And this show is brought to you by Helpful for Life, helpfulforlife.com. And if you're watching this now, you're either on YouTube or Twitch or Instagram or Twitter. Those are the platforms we're on as we are speaking. And eventually we will be on things like, I don't know, podcasts. I need to press the button to get those deployed. So
just go ahead and hit the button.
Yeah, push the button.
The big red, but the easy button.
It didn't work.
Oh,
man.
Strange tech
Guess we'll have to try again later.
Yeah. Don't just keep hitting the same
Maybe in
button.
another 30 episodes we'll try it out. But yeah, yesterday, what did we talk about yesterday?
Oh, we covered, we started talking about a book club that Reed and I were in that covered two books. One of them is called Range by David Epstein, and the other is So Good They Can't Ignore You by Cal Newport.
Yeah, and we announced we're going to do kind of a series of our own on that topic, and we're calling it, at least for now, So Good They Can't Ignore Your Range. And if you've been listening to this show for any significant amount of time, you'll know that names are bound to change. Like the name of this show changed a couple times over the years.
If it doesn't stick, it doesn't stick.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's kind of like a Post-it note, you know?
Yeah, just the first 1,000 versions, it wouldn't work.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what we're on right now.
Yeah, so we talked a little bit about So Good You Can't Ignore Your Range. What else did we talk about?
Oh, we got into one of our new segments called Tits.
Yes.
And
we did talk about
tits. It was a lot of fun. Yeah, we talked about this is technology stuff, and Reed mostly discussed Wi-Fi and how it works and how radio frequencies work and travel, and kind of went into depth on how Wi-Fi works and one of the reasons why it doesn't work for you sometimes.
Yeah, and for those of you who are rolling your eyes like, oh, why would I want to hear about that? You know? Screw you, man. Why don't you want to hear what I have to say?
Wow. Look at what y'all did. You hurt Reed's feelings.
No. Actually, you may roll your eyes, but it's literally all around you and pretty much every single piece of technology you use today, Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, cell phone, your freaking car radio, if you still use one of those. So it's maybe worth listening for, 20 minutes or however long we talked about it, where I explain exactly how it works and hopefully did it in a way that anyone can understand, and using, analogies like flashlights and things like that. So if that was helpful for you, please let us know. If it was still confusing, please let us know, and we will work to kind of rejigger some of that stuff to make sure that you guys are figuring it out. But hopefully y'all are able to grasp onto that one.
Yeah, I think it was a nice episode. It also sort of sparked from, I'd recently had challenges with my Wi-Fi at getting it into my shop. The commenter actually commented about having Wi-Fi in an outlying building. And so there are things like that are going on that are sort of, I don't know, interesting problems, good problems, and usually we just solve them with more and more consumerism.
Right.
So the issue is like, are you buying the right thing to solve your problem? And that's really where, on occasion, Reed and I might be able to be helpful for y'all, mostly because we've tried a lot of things, we read a lot of junk, and I don't know. I feel like we're doing pretty good at the whole consumer journey. Let's let's dig in and do some research and figure out what's best. At least we can offer advice on it.
Yeah, and on a previous episode, which we'll include linked below eventually, we talked about our customer journey and what it looks like for us when we're buying something and researching, and the things that we think about, the things that we look into, how we avoid researching for too long, which sometimes we're admittedly not the best about. But yeah, unfortunately, in today's day and age, like, research has to be done before you buy something. Things have gotten to the point where they're so complex that unless you do some research or someone else does that research for you and then explains it to you, that you're not going to get something that works for you. I mean, that's just unfortunate truth of the way it is. I mean, back in the day with Ryder, like, it was just like, hey, my wheel fell off of my Flintstone car. And you say, here's another stone. It was that simple. But now it's a lot more complex.
Well, sometimes, you would just hand them a stick instead. Because, we didn't have a lot of options back then. And sometimes you couldn't find another wheel.
Right. And so then they would say, here, Ryder, hold this. And he'd hold the axle. And then the other person would take the stick and beat him and say, run. Run.
I just carry the whole car. We were a lot stronger back in the day. Yeah. What has happened to all that strength?
I don't know. And we might never know. But let's go ahead and run a quick intro. Helpful for life. Welcome back to What the Hell is Water. This is episode 35, November 16th, 2021. Today, what are we going to talk about today, Ryder?
Well, we've done our little recap, and I keep kind of...
Challenge. What was the challenge?
What was the challenge yesterday?
We got distracted by the tits.
Yeah, we did. When we talked about so good they can't ignore your range, then we discussed the letter shapes, and I can't remember which book that was in. If that was in Range,
that wasn't So Good They Can't.
I think it was in Range.
It was in Range.
But one of the things that's kind of interesting about it is like, what are you really good at? What are you really proficient at? Something you're bridging towards mastery on that might be your deep dive, right? This one subject matter that you actually dive and dig deep on. And so Reed had done some drawings of these letter shapes, and you can actually dig deep, and it's kind of a T shape, because here's the ground, and then you dig deep, and it's like a well. And then you could also, of course, have like a pie shape where you have two wells, because you might be really deep in two topics. And so what we're kind of talking about is, what letter shape are you? You could also be an M, for instance, have multiple sort of deep dives. One of the kind of fun things to think about with this is that you can dig deep, and then you can come back up to the surface, and you can look over into another area of expertise. And this would be like climbing out of the maze and getting on top and getting like a bird's eye view of it. And maybe you go dig deep somewhere else. Maybe you go get into another sort of career or field or job and find some more skills. I think both of these books are really big about acquiring skills. So sometimes knowing what your existing skills are can really help you bridge into, say, a third or a fourth skill.
Yeah. And so, to clarify real quickly, or to summarize real quickly, rather, the challenge for yesterday was determine which shape you think you are. And there's no big special process to doing this, at least not one that we're proposing. It's just think about it. Like, hey, Are you really deep in one thing? And that means maybe you're more like this eye here. And for those who are audio only, we've now added visual elements so you can see the lowercase I. Or maybe you're more like the uppercase T, where you're kind of broad and across a lot of things, not very deep. But then in maybe one area, you go really deep. Or maybe you're like an M, which could be lowercase or uppercase, where you've got that kind of breadth at the top, but then you kind of dive into a couple of areas going kind of deeper. So those are the three different areas. And one little hybrid we talked about was the pi symbol as well. Maybe it's kind of like an M, but I guess 2 instead of 3. Yeah. And then, if you do the little wavy one, it's
if
like,
you do the
fun,
wave, yeah.
It's like, woo, woo. So that was our challenge for yesterday. And which letter did you say you were? I can't remember.
I was blanking. I was saying something like, I'm just a dashed line.
A dashed line, yeah. Yeah,
like
that's right. You're
broad.
Like,
a flatliner.
And then I said I was a bunch of M's. I was Maybe that's actually probably, it's more like meh. Meh.
Yeah.
It's
So,
like an
yeah.
M, a sideways E,
when
like
we're-
an uppercase E, and then an H. So it's kind of like some are sideways, some are, but they're like two of them are just like out in
Reed,
space. Like
taking
what's
it
going
so
on?
complicated. It's like, yeah, what are you, Reed?
The H is
I'm
going
more
up.
complicated
Like
than
why?
you.
Yeah. Why is the H going up? Like he doesn't really know. Like
it's funny. We ask you what letter you are, but I think we actually want to know what sound you are.
yes, please. Yeah. So what do we can talk about today? Now that we've recapped we've done the recap. We did the challenge. How are you feeling?
Man, I'm feeling okay.
All right, perfect. Ask that one. All right,
Yeah.
now we're on next. Moving forward.
Okay, Reed, but how are you feeling today?
I am fine. All right, great. We've expressed
We're
our
halfway
feelings.
through the show.
Yes.
Yeah.
Men.
Expressing emotion.
Yes.
You just saw it right there.
You saw it here first.
Oh, man. Yeah.
How about that sports ball?
Sports team.
Yeah,
team
sports
team.
real hard yesterday.
Oh, yeah? All day.
All day.
Oh, and how about that score thing?
Yep, that was good. Want to go have a cigar after this?
Oh, I can't. My wife won't let me.
Wait.
I break character.
Oh, my goodness. So today we're going to be talking about media. And when I say media, we're going to focus on consumer media. And the way I say that, I'm trying to think of a broad way of saying basically movies, TV shows, and maybe radio. Kind of those.
Entertainments, maybe.
There you go.
And a lot of these will probably be fictional. And I think this is something Reed and I've casually touched on in other podcasts, but it's pretty easy to make references to sort of movies as analogies or metaphors for things that are going on around us, or even the way that our brains and culture get formed. So I just kind of think it's a fun topic to jump into, to sort of start like just bringing up movies and thinking about random stuff that goes on in them and how it might or might not apply to our current sort of world or culture or environment.
Yeah. And, one of the benefits of our show here is that, we like to talk about some of these kind of deeper, more heady, serious topics, but then we also like to keep it light and goofy, as we were just seeing. And so one way we like to keep it light and goofy is by having some callbacks to previous shows. So look, we've got Danielle here. She says, I'm a pie guy. Still funny. So she wants to hear the voice writer did yesterday as a pie guy.
Guys, I'm a pie guy.
And you still doubt what letter you are. I mean, I think
that's
that's gotta be what it is.
I don't know what I'm channeling there. I feel like I'm channeling the crazy Family Guy pedophile, the old man. That's what I feel like that voice
cookies?
is. Hey, Chris.
Want some milk and cookies? I just want to watch you eat them.
I can't really do that one very well. I need to see it. I need to see it again. I'm more of a right on the habit right there.
Shifted because I'm not actually good at accents or voices, so I've got like two.
Oh, I like that one.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. What's the other one? Do tell.
Hey guys.
I'm trying to think of what that one.
Guy.
What does that remind me of? I don't know. Maybe like
Monster?
or the Cookie Monster. Yeah, that's what I was saying. So they're both centered around desserts. We got Pie Guy, we got Cookie Monster. What about Carrot Man?
Oh, you guys.
When we're talking about how consumer, what was the entertainment media? Okay, so when we talk about how entertainment media impacted society, we were thinking about kind of it through a couple of different lenses. So first of them, let's talk about sex. How has sex in nudity and things like that? I mean, over the years, what kind of impact do you think that entertainment media has had on these types of things?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because they always say sex sells. So it's like, not only is it sort of an advertising trope, but it's also something that, it seems like most movies they're beautiful people. And that's a big premise for it. You mostly we go to watch movies, and it's easier to watch, or we're more desirous of watching it if there is a beautiful person in it. So, you get a beautiful person in there, maybe they show a little more skin than normal. Like, this is not somebody you're going to see out on the street. So there's something sort of tantalizing about all that seems to shape the entire industry.
Yeah. That's really interesting. And I'm wondering if we as a society will ever move past that, because I get it early on and it makes a ton of sense, right? And also the first thing when you said sex sells, I'm thinking like, well, did it always? Was it back in the day? It was like, hey, let me lift this pant leg. Check out this ankle. Ooh, box office hit.
Yeah, well, here's some beans I found and some poop.
Yes.
Thank you for the payment.
Nice.
I'll trade a little ankle for some poop beans.
I'm not really sure how your brain connected those two, but you know what? All I can think is
just thinking of the earliest
I'm
forms
a
of
poop
payment.
guy.
I'm a poop guy.
Hey guys. Oh man. So we're talking about nudity and will sex always sell? And I'm trying to think, like, for me in my life personally, if I look at why did I watch a show or why did I watch a movie in this day and age, pretty much 99% of the time for me, I go after someone, or I watch it after someone's recommended it to me. Which, if you follow that trail back, eventually someone was the one who was originally marketed to. And, it used to be more in the form of billboards and commercials and I guess radio ads and things like that. But now I feel like it's more so, hey, guess what popped on my screen today? Because you're already looking at the flow of Netflix or Hulu or whatnot, and then they're the ones deciding which ones get shown and how they're shown. And oh, by the way, in case you didn't know, we mentioned A/B testing the other day, where they show one thing to one audience and another thing to the other audience, calling it test A and test B, and then they compare and see which one of these was more beta. In this case, it was, in the case of Netflix, for example, they'll put up a movie picture and then another movie picture and see which one more people click on.
Yeah, they'll have multiple. They have something like up to 12 different thumbnail images for each movie on Netflix.
And it's not just, sorry to interrupt, it's not just, some random subset we're going to show A and some random subset's going to show B. It's like, no, we've profiled all of you, and we think option 72 is best for writer.
Yeah, because say for instance, I like rom-coms, and rom-coms have a style of thumbnail image that has like several people's faces on it all smiling or something like that. And that means that they're going to show me whatever show they just produced, and they're going to call it a rom-com, and they're going to put that thumbnail image on it because I'm more likely to click on it. On the other hand, if I like techie movies, then they're going to have one that has, weird digital crap going on, maybe wires coming out of somebody's head, because I would be more likely to click on that. And it can all be the same show. And so that's what's kind of interesting as well, is with Netflix, you can really see the formulas at work, because a lot of the shows aren't very good on Netflix, but there's a lot of money behind them. You have some big stars. And like, for instance, my wife and I just watched this new one, Red Notice, with Ryan Reynolds and The Rock. And it was... and Gal, who is
Gadot.
one? Yeah,
I messed up the name, but close enough.
Yeah, and so we were watching that, and the problem was that they just didn't need all that talent for the script. Like the talent and the script didn't live up to each other.
Right.
And we just watched it because there were superstars on there, and it was highly recommended for us, and it was actually not even enjoyable. And I was like, man, I usually like anything these guys are in.
Yeah, I was going to say, I feel like, is this your first Ryan Reynolds movie you haven't liked?
Well, I think there's a couple in the past, but we're not going to talk about them.
Those are buried.
They're very traumatic.
We already took those out back and shot them. So it's interesting to think about, now more than ever, the end advertising and the appeal, it drives what makes the movie. And, this, by the way, isn't just with movies. I mean, when what we do here at Helpful for Life as content producers, like, every time I'm walking through the world, I'm seeing things in thumbnails and titles. And guess what? Those titles are just the right amount of clickbaity, right? It's like, hey, here's how I could spin that. And here's how I could spin that. And now it's a filter that I see the world through, because it's like, guess what? That's going to get more views. That's going to get more clicks. So it's interesting how that works backwards. And I don't know. I would be curious to know if we think we could move past that, especially because one of the other topics we're going to kind of touch on here is how, this has changed people's view of different minority groups and things like that, and how that's evolved over the years. And it's like, and also maybe being more inclusive of diversity, and not just in the sense of, race or whatnot, but also, hey, maybe there's more less pretty people and there's more bigger people that aren't conform to the standard American norm of beauty, whatnot. But yeah, I'm wondering, are we going to move to this post beauty entertainment world where it's not just about you being beautiful.
I think that there's, I hope so in a lot of ways, and I think it's happening in a lot of films. One of the interesting things when you're bringing up thumbnail images and filters as we move through the world, I mean, you've noticed that these thumbnails, if you look at like the thumbnail image for something like Schitt's Creek, they have photoshopped the people so much you can't even tell who they are anymore. The teeth are all glowing white. The faces are all smooth.
That's the radium.
Yeah, that's the radium right there. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of interesting to talk about moving beyond superficial appearances when it seems like we're trying to make every image even more superficial. Mm-hmm. So we're even getting more and more into where shows are now animated all the time, or the CGI enhances people's appearances even more than natural. So it's almost like we're going the opposite direction. We're just getting rid of people altogether. And eventually we're just going to end up with animated creatures walking around. You know, I know that's probably not going to be how it goes because we still like to see people and actors and pretty people. And there's a lot of imagining and hope that kind of goes into the idea that we could ever achieve to be that thing. But yeah, if we want to talk about superficial appearances, I feel like, if anything, we're going more superficial while at the same time including a whole lot of different people. So we can include people that are different shapes and sizes and orientations sexually and racially. We can sort of group all these people together, and then we sort of have this, I don't know, kind of a mix of things. And there seems to be a tendency right now to actually try to hit all the topics. You have to have so many different kinds of people in the show. And I think that there's something about that can start to feel contrived.
Yeah, well, you know what it reminds me of is textbooks. It's like you pick up any textbooks, especially, you know, when I was in middle school, high school, so early 2000s to late 2000s. Anyways, every textbook you open, it was almost a game. It's like, hey, let me see how many pages I need to go until I've seen a Native American, someone in a wheelchair, a black person. It's like they make sure you get every single thing in there. But then it's also interesting too because, you know, I get the desire, right? You want to make sure that everyone can see themselves in whatever it is, whether it's your textbook, your film, you know. And I was just listening to I was listening to Range or So Good They Can't Ignore You, one of those books, and they were talking about the Girl Scout of America leader and how she, you know, redid the marketing and brought it. She's like, I want, you know, someone in Alaska and this Native American tribe to see themselves in the Girl Scouts of America workbook. And they made this big inclusivity push, and it, you know, it had led to record numbers of people joining and a much more increase in minorities and things like that. So it has impact. But you're right; it can border on like, hey, like for example, I think the population of African Americans is roughly 12% of the population. But if you look in entertainment media, like you're definitely seeing more than 1 in 8 people being African American. And you know, I should say you definitely see that, but maybe that's my bias and my lens. But I feel like it's you know, overrepresented. And is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? I'm not saying either way. I'm just kind of observing. Like I feel like you see it.
Yeah,
right?
Because if you want to sort of map back onto the actual numbers of society, people that identify as homosexual or something is like between 3 and 5% and this kind of thing. And so, you know, but there are other things that are in specific industries, then this pops up more often. And so, you know, in the arts, then you might have more people, and that's, I know, sort of stereotypical, but it also might be true that certain groups end up kind of in certain communities that are more tolerant or accepting of them. And using movies as a way to sort of push this out to the wider world, to climatize them to these new ideas or these alternate ways of being, it seems to be one of the things that movies do quite well. You know, it's also the bad guys, like Nazis, always bad, right? Superman, always good, kind of thing. And then lately, in the last maybe 10 years, 15 years, we've even started trying to break that down to where now even Superman isn't always the good guy.
Yeah. You know, and I really enjoy that trend. And because one of the things it does is it makes things less predictable. And for me, the more predictable something is, the less I enjoy it. And there's also this whole balance, frankly, economics and money. It's like, hey, if somebody, it's in every form of entertainment. If you look at a song, it's like, if people have this repetitive pattern their brain likes it more. And if it's this simple thing that they can pick up, they can grab the first time listening to it, they can latch onto a couple words because they're said so often. Oh, that's why those songs work so nicely. They play well with the brain. Like there have been studies that show this, and then that's what makes them popular. And so then they get played more, and then they make more money. And then when artists get more and more popular, the record companies encourage them to do songs like this because they know they get played more, they get more money. And so it actually ends up kind of this reinforcing cycle. It's like, oh, is this good because it's good, or is it just good because people naturally, their caveman brains are attracted to it? And so I think that happens in movies and TV shows as well.
Oh, and of course it does, and it's a good point to make though, that our brains are hackable. There is kind of a formula to it, and the problem is one of the things a lot of people get declared as elitists or overly judgmental for having taste in a certain rank, in a certain sort of area. One of the things that's kind of fascinating about that taste is some of these people work very hard not to fall prey to those tropes. So you can actually defend yourself against some of those things. And then once you do defend yourself against that, then you're no longer populist or conformist. And then people criticize you for being elitist. But there's also something about good art that doesn't try to use cliches to make more money or get messages across. There is entertainment that's out there that's just for you to mindlessly consume, and then there's this kind of version of it that transforms into art, and it's trying to ask bigger questions in more complex ways, and sometimes they can merge and be kind of the same thing, but I think that's hard to do.
Are you implying that art is meant for entertainment only is not art?
No, not that. I'm sort of implying that there are ways of asking questions and sort of giving information back to the public that is more complex. It requires more thinking. It requires them to actually sort of process information in a way that can be more profound over time. And oftentimes that means that it's not coming in the form of platitudes or cliches. So what I'm kind of talking about is, if something is too formulaic, then you don't actually have to think very much about it because you already know how you feel about it.
Right.
So when you already know how you feel about it, then, and you're going to purchase it anyway, I don't know if that's necessarily art because it's not really pushing anything. It's just simply a means of consumption and entertainment, which is okay. I'm just saying that there's different kind of levels that you can move through.
Right. And I want to point out that, the factors are right. Right now, to one of the common things that's said and has truth behind it around social media is it enforces people to be tighter in the circles that they are already in, right? And it's going to show people the content. It's going to show people the people that we think that. When I say we, I mean I am Facebook, YouTube, any kind of company who is financially makes money from your time and attention, right? The attention economy we've talked about a few times. Well, I'm going to send you things that's going to maximize your time on platform. That's one of the most important things for these companies is, okay, so I'm going to send Ryder things that I think he already kind of agrees with or thinks about. And so you're going to get tighter in this circle of people believing these things. And it can become, another word is an echo chamber. It's like, hey, this is this empty room where we're all talking, but we're saying the same thing. It just sounds like a bunch of echoes. And so we have all the factors right now to where entertainment can literally show people just the things they want. And that could be TV shows, that could be movies. And it's like, oh, we recognize and we'll get more into the race thing here in a second. But for example, there's a show called Dear White People. And, they go almost too far in your face, like, hey, this is what this is about. This is what we're doing. And I'm like, okay, it just depends on what you're trying to do. Like, it's kind of like bumper stickers, It's like, hey, if you make it this much in your face, like, you're not going to get, like, the dude on his farm in Nebraska.
I'm reloading.
Right. You're not going to get the guy who's digging through goat poop in Nebraska to watch the show and get some sort of change. You're just, like, preaching to the choir and maybe even making them like more angry in some ways. So it's like, what are you achieving in that?
Yeah, that does seem to be the echo chamber of Facebook, right? That now we have entire shows built around, and it probably has always been. No, it hasn't always been that way. We can now spend a lot of money and have shows that are completely preaching to the choir about one topic, further outraging them or giving them more arguments. And I would say that previously that could happen in groups like religion and everything, but with television, at one point, television had to be mass media because of the way it was broadcast. You couldn't just choose anything. It had to appeal to enough people. Eventually, there became enough channels where you could actually start getting more and more niche and finding those pockets. But originally, when there's only a couple of channels out there, that wasn't the case.
Right. And so when TV, there were only a couple of channels, and there were also only a handful of companies that all movies went through, right? Mm-hmm. And they were the big production houses. And now, over the last 15 years especially, we've seen, to use a fancy word, a disaggregation. And now there's, I don't know, probably hundreds, if not thousands, of production companies, and basically you can make whatever you want. It's just about getting a little bit of money to do it, and people have done better and better because technology has progressed of making movies, TV shows, etc. on a much lower budget than ever before. And sometimes the low budget ones are the ones that, you know, have this outsized success, which makes it actually more interesting for the investor. It's like, oh, I put in, you know, $1 million and I got 50. Wow, that's really good, versus putting in, say, 40 or 100 and then only maybe getting a little bit more, or maybe actually losing tens of millions of dollars, right?
I put in 40 and I got, 39 back.
Right.
That's there's sort of a joke in the art world about how you become a rich gallery owner. Is that you start out with a huge fortune and then you open a gallery. So you go from like super wealthy down to just rich, because that's what happens a lot in the arts. There's a lot of it's risk taking. There's a lot of failure in it. But increasingly that's also dropped because it's a very gamified system now. And you can be pretty sure the metrics and the numbers are pretty good. And they've gotten better and better at it over time. There will still occasionally be some flops and some things that go wrong because you're reliant on people and storytelling and directors' abilities to pull things off and get people to work together and bring out their best performance. But, given the sort of formulaic nature, it's one of the reasons why I bring up things like animation, is because that takes a ton of time and a ton of hours, and you darn well better have a good story for it. And so they have people who are just story crafting like geniuses that write the scripts whenever you're going to have all these man hours involved in making a movie. So yeah, I think we're pretty targeted, and we're pretty kind of in an interesting way hacked. Like if you there's so much good entertainment out there for us. One of the things I think about a lot, or not a whole lot, but occasionally, is that how much time and energy we spend developing entertainments for ourselves, that if that energy was spent in any other way, what could that achieve? And I'm not going to say that we should, because I think the arts and culture are very vital to who we are as humans and how we recognize ourselves. But at the same point, sometimes I'm like, this is insane. When you get into the amount of money spent on sports and all these other kinds of things and how television on sports operates. I think we both listened to a podcast where they talked about how much time is actually football is played over a course of a 3-hour game, and it's something like 12 minutes of actual football in a 3-hour game is played.
Yeah, and it's interesting, but because all the things that get built up around the thing, because it's like, oh, here's a thing, we've got people's attention, people are making money off of this. Oh, now let's sell advertising, and then that adds a certain thing, and then you get things like ESPN or the news, like when they became 24-hour channels, it's like, do you think that much more was going on in the world? Or because if not, then by definition, what they're going to be talking about around the clock is either going to be repetitive or not as high quality. And it's like, I feel like both of those things happen. And I've been in the room with, I have plenty of friends who are big sports friends and family who are big sports fans, right? And I've been in the room with them when they're like, it's in between football season and baseball and hockey. And now it's just like a couple of weeks, like, nothing's good on. They're just talking about what's going to happen. And it's like, I've heard this already. Like, is he the best? Is he the GOAT? I don't know if he's the GOAT. Well, but he makes good coffee.
right. I think all these things are really, that goat coffee. One of the things that I think is so funny about all of this is that it's all kind of artificial. These are games. These are ones I keep sort of bringing up this idea of entertainments. And then I keep trying to like push it back into this realm where there's some sort of concept that's being offered to us. And we'll probably move on in a second to talk about race, but also if we want to talk about like capitalism, there's something fascinating that I was bringing up to read before the show about things like the Squid Game, for instance. There's a lot of horror movies that talk about dystopia, and they talk about capitalism and these kind of failures and these kind of apocalyptic futures. In Squid Game on Netflix, then they go through, they're basically, these are people who are sort of broken by capitalism. They don't have any money left. They don't have any choices left. So they're sort of pulled together. And at some point, they make a choice to be in these games that will kill them, all for the sake of making some money.
Yeah. So let me give a quick resummary.
Yeah,
so basically, these are all 400 people or something like that who are in Korea.
Yeah, 400.
And they've, a lot of them maybe had gambling problems or other sorts of things where they are now hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars in debt, and to the kinds of people you don't want to be in debt to. And so what happened was there's some rich benefactor or multiple or organization or whatever that organized these games, and they invited all these people to these games, and then they brought them all to some third-party location, and they play some sort of traditional Korean children's game, and they're like, oh, this is all you got to do, and they're like, they show them at the end, if you win these 4 games or whatever the number is, you will get a bunch of money, and they're like, sweet, and then they go to play the first game, it's this children's game, and they realize like, oh, it's red light, green light, and if they move when it's a red light, they get shot.
yeah, it's pretty bad. You know, to sort of watch that kind of happening to them, because I just, like, you sort of see them and they're all, their minds are blown and they're like, this is horrible, this is the worst
literally
thing ever.
Some of their minds are blown. Yeah,
right? They right out the back. And then they turn around and they release them, and they say, if you don't want to play, you don't have to play. And then they said, but if you do want to play, come back and meet us at this point. And almost everybody shows up again, because you go from one prison to another prison. So one of the interesting things about that show is that the sort of island prison where you play these games and you feel like this is atrocious. I can't say the word right. Atrocious and horrible. This is a real travesty. I can't believe this is happening. You can't treat humans this way. And yet the outside world is the exact thing that is treating humans the same way. And so you come on to here and you get to play these children's games. Well, could that not be just a metaphor for the adult games that we play, right? That aren't actually all that much different. And we're still clawing our way to the top, and there can only be one survivor, and everyone along the way has to die or suffer. And so you start sort of seeing this as this metaphor in the sort of island games where they pulled everyone in and they're killing them through playing these games. At one point, the boss says something like, well, this is about equality. He goes, this is the only place where everything has always been equal for these people, and they get to play the game on equal footing. And it's just like the sort of mind twist that it takes to assume that this is what equality looks like. Equality is the equal chance to die.
Yeah, and that actually brings up something we talked about last week, I think, which was meritocracy, which is the idea where you're standing in society, how successful you are or whatnot, however you want to describe that, is based on your merit, based on your works, how good you do, which it sounds not too dissimilar from this. Like, hey, it doesn't matter what your debt is, it doesn't matter your physical fitness, how old you are, all of these things. Like, if you play these games and you win, you're gonna get money.
Yeah. And, and the other side of this is this show also plays out as a horror movie, right? But you have protagonists and all this other kind of stuff in there, and there's something just sort of, if you think of meritocracy as a dystopia, as a horror trait, rather than being this trait that we sort of laud and everyone pull yourself up by your own bootstraps, and that if you kind of take that sort of American ethos of becoming anything you want to become, and then you see that maybe this is all a trap, that we've been sort of sold, that this is something that we're sort of in an invisible prison because these traits don't actually play out properly, because the deck is actually stacked against you. Yet these sort of witticisms, or once again sort of cliches or tropes that we spit out to people, are the very things that are the bars, because they keep themselves in the cage because they actually believe these thoughts.
Yeah, and there's a whole bunch of psychological tricks basically within that show. Like, one of the things is, and you may have said this already, but everyone can leave as long as the majority of people vote to leave.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, you know how that's probably going to go.
Right.
And so it's an interesting thing. And of course they dramatize a whole thing where you get to see every single person vote, which is applying it gets into election psychology and stuff like that.
Yeah,
and
because your peers are watching you vote, so they know who you vote for. Like, no pressure.
Right. So there's a lot there. It is an interesting show. I mean, if you had to say why that show has gotten so much popularity, what would you say?
Oh, yeah, I think it has more to do with the kind of horror aspect, which is strange to talk about, but I'm not sure why it is as popular as it is. I think the people I've talked to about it have not made this kind of capitalist metaphor connection that I have. Instead, it just seems to be a game of bloodbaths to them. And there's a lot of games out there, old movies like Cube and stuff like that, where you put people in and there's a puzzle to solve to get back out. And there's always some sort of mad system or mad genius that is really rich that is trying to fund this entire process. So, yeah, things like Saw, right? It's all about, getting back to survival of the fittest and the reality of bringing out the true human, and the true human is this kind of survival animal. And so that's kind of a myth that goes through a lot of these games. And I'm curious about why horror itself kind of exists as such a huge field. This idea that sort of death and awfulness surround us. It seems like that's only something that could come about in a very safe, secure society.
Yeah, horror is a very interesting thing because, if you talk about psychologically manipulative, so far we've been talking about, things on a much more subtle level where the people don't even necessarily realize they're being manipulated and that kind of thing. But with horror films, it's literally the point. Like, it is all about psychological manipulation. And, talk about a genre that really benefited from getting audio. That was one where music completely changes how things are felt and how things are seen. And when you get this suspenseful music, you get these orchestral pieces where it builds up to this climax, and it's always like, da-da-da!
Yeah, that. Can you do that one more? Yeah, there we go. Got that.
That's actually how that would be fun to go into, especially a non-horror movie. You just go into the movie and just make these strange loud outbursts at whatever, or just have like a really annoying laugh. Or
actually, now what I want to do is I want to do a complete orchestra of movies with Reed making all of the sounds with his face.
Yeah, that would be fun. But yeah, if you've never watched a horror movie silent or with the muted, go watch at least a scene or two. Just see how different it is and how much the context changes once you remove that sound. I feel like that's a fun little thing to do.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I like it.
And you get too scared.
Yeah. And it just, and they do the suspense thing. They really build it up. Everything is super like suspenseful all the time, and I'm just like, I don't want to be feeling this. Which is a super other weird thing to sort of be aware of is when these movies are manipulating you. Reed and I have talked about sound effects too, and how the sound effects don't actually match up with reality, yet they become like a trope that we're so accustomed to hearing. It's like once you hear the sort of clink clink, you go, oh, they're grabbing a gun. But guns don't make that sound. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah.
Just
I
tangents.
wouldn't know what sound they probably did make, so I'm fooled.
More like bang. They make a bang sound. I'm just kidding. I don't know.
Silenced guns is another one.
Yeah, silenced guns that are actually silent.
No, well, it's just like they use their movie magic, and it's just like, oh yeah, pew pew, and it's like, if you put here what a suppressor actually sounds like, it's not quite quiet. So real quick, obviously we weren't going to be able to talk about all the things, when it comes to entertainment, but we kind of touched on a little bit, right? We talked very briefly about kind of sex and nudity, and then we kind of went into how advertising and money drives, kind of like the tail wagging the horse or dog or whatever that phrase is, the tail wagging the goat.
There we go.
And basically how, meaning the thing at the end actually drives what happens at the beginning, which is, hey, how well is this thing going to sell? What kind of market is there? How can we advertise it? What kind of people are going to watch it? How
what
viral
kind of people
is it?
do we put in it? Right? Like all this stuff is mapped out ahead of time.
Yeah, and also when we're going to release it, that's a big thing. And it's like, oh, what else is being released at that time? There are so many factors that go into creating some piece of entertainment, especially TV shows, movies, things like that, that it affects what the thing is itself. And it's like, oh, well, there's already one big sci-fi blockbuster this year. Like, do we want to be the second one?
Yeah. No, well, and there's things like, I'm curious about Marvel. Like, they just keep putting out movies. And I'm just like, I don't even know. I think they're making their own game.
Yeah.
Sometimes you get too big to fail.
Yeah, so we talked a little bit about, the advertising and how the money drives what gets made. We talked a little bit about how the content now can be made for such specific circles and the pros and cons of that, and can lead to some echo chambers and also some part of society that's not actually receiving the message that arguably you want them to hear. Any other kind of strange we grabbed?
Yeah, no, those were all good. We really did talk a lot about sort of maybe the meta topics that are behind these stories as well. And I kept bringing up this concept of art and entertainment and how they can be slightly different. But the fascinating thing for me about Squid Game is I don't know how much it was trying to be art, but I think that the messaging behind it, the conceptual messaging, has stuck with me. And so that in itself sort of makes it into art, whether or not it was trying to be.
Yeah. And Squid Game's an interesting one. I've only seen about 3 episodes or so, and to be honest, I don't know if have the interest to keep going because, it's like, oh, and to be fair, it's only been 3 episodes, but it's like, okay, does this have good character development? I mean, how predictable is this going to go? Is like, okay, it seems like this is going to be a little bit of rinse and repeat for a couple other games. You're going to learn a little bit more about the backstories, and then some more people are going to die. There's going to be a character that you like, and that character is eventually going to die. And then you're like, oh, no.
And there's going to be some character that you like who's probably going to live.
Yeah. And then, the big question mark is, are some people going to get the money? And who are the people behind the curtain? And it's like, I don't know if I care that much. Have you seen it all the way through?
Yeah, we saw it all the way through. But I was hesitant to watch it at first, so I know we could keep going on this, but I think it's because we talked about expectations before, because I expected it to be so formulaic and so trope that I really had a hard time kind of getting into it as well. And then at some point, I guess I kind of turned a corner and just went, you know what, if I start viewing this all through this sort of like conceptual lens, then all of a sudden I found the whole show to be sort of much more easy to sort of move through, which who knew that would work? But
right.
It's all about expectations.
Yeah, for sure. Which we talked about expectations, not Friday, but the Friday before. So if you guys are interested to hear a little bit what we think about expectations, pros and cons, and things like that, you go check that episode out. But yeah, the last topics we briefly mentioned, we talked a little bit about minorities and race and non-race things. But yeah, we kind of just dipped in on a whole bunch of things. We kind of did a
very squatty M's.
Very short M, kind of like a rumble strip.
Yes. Yeah, we rumbled.
Yes, we did. So I'm sure we'll talk about that some more another day. But for now, it's Tuesday, and guess what that means?
Tarot Tuesday.
No, Tits Tuesday. We thought we'd bring on a. Oh, sorry. Yeah, tarot. That's what it is. Yeah. So here we've got Danielle Garcia, my wife, the lovely, the magical, the mystical, and she's going to read some tarot for us. And why don't you talk while I set up my other microphone?
I was just thinking we could just pull a quick card for the day.
Card for the day.
Yeah. Just a card for everyone.
Wow. Do you do this? You do this for yourself though too, right? Just like so you can do personal, or you can do it for a huge group of people.
Yeah, we can just say, whoever's watching right now, what card has a message or a topic?
Oh, popped out.
So this is the Empress, which popped out, I think, as the present card, the very first tarot reading I did on the show. But she is a part of the major arcana. So in tarot, different parts of the deck, you have the major and minor arcana. And she's the third one in the sequence. And I don't know why now my brain is trying to think of what I said before about the card versus waking up. So,
well, yeah, let's, do you want to describe the card to
Sure, that's a great place to start. So actually the first thing that I noticed about this card that I hadn't really thought about before was it looks kind of like Christmas trees in the background. And Reed and I are planning to go buy a Christmas tree, like maybe this weekend.
You tree killers.
Well, if you saw the text from your sister, then we might be going to a Christmas tree farm, which I love because Taylor Swift has a song called Christmas Tree Farm. It's a great Christmas song, but I don't know that one. I'm still not playing Christmas music.
I didn't actually know that they farmed. I mean, I guess I have never thought about it, but when I think of a farm of Christmas trees, it's kind of weird. I think of like a plowed rows and all these little trees popping up every year, and yeah, it's very strange. Then you go out and kill them all.
Yeah, so there's a background of a forest of what could be Christmas trees, but maybe just some sort of evergreen tree. And then there's a river running through it. And in the foreground is a woman sitting on a chair in a green dress. And she has a sort of crown, or I don't know what you would call that, tiara of some fashion on her head. And she is usually, like, I guess you would call her an archetype of, which I actually don't even really know how to describe that word, so don't ask me for the definition. But I can look that one up too.
Yeah, archetypes are... So I think Jungian archetypes are the big ones, which are... They're just sort of certain...
templates of people.
Yeah. I mean,
I don't know.
It kind of works that way. There's certain types of people maybe, and an archetype would have to be the sort of the template that they operate on. But it's kind of like the hero and the healer, and you could even relate it back to things like video games. A lot of the character types sort of generate from these kind of basic templates of humanity. And oftentimes they deal with different phases of life as well. But yeah, the things that need to keep humans going. Man, I'm kind of botching it on that. It's been a long time since I've studied anything Jungian.
Well, she is the Empress as the creator, both of life. This is talking about motherhood. So now I'm thinking about the tarot reading that we got 2 weeks ago where she's like, are y'all talking about having kids? This card comes out again. Jeez, Reed.
Coming up on Friday, we will be live streaming us making a baby in front of a Christmas tree.
No.
Okay, so it won't be live. We'll pre-record.
I don't know where to go from there.
Yeah, there's nowhere to go. Just ignore him.
Sometimes that's a goal.
So with
sometimes
this
that's
card,
a goal.
You said this is a female archetype. You said there's trees in the background, and you said what, major arcana?
Yes, so talking about the soul's journey through life, and I would say maybe the life phase that this is talking about is I guess knowing, like, that intuition, knowing what you want to create, and then starting the creation process. So I think.
So is there anything, I mean, and y'all are talking about the creation of a child and creation of a Christmas tree in the house.
Yes.
And all these kinds of things.
Just to be clear, you say we. This is very much a Danielle thing right now.
No, it's a tarot card thing and tarot reader thing. Apparently. Spirit guides, messages. I don't control this. What was I going to say before that?
No, he was just saying how you're talking about.
Yeah. No, I was just talking about the creation and the path and the journey that's sort of laying out before you and stuff like that.
So another thing we've talked about is like creation of our own Christmas traditions. So, maybe your family had a tradition that you used to do, but you want to reignite it, or you want to create a totally new holiday tradition of your own. So we have Thanksgiving coming up. Maybe you do something different and then it becomes a tradition. Just takes one time.
Yeah, I like that idea. I think we'll use that as our challenge. Which have we said that one already before or no? Maybe that was just you and me talking. I don't know. I can't remember.
Tradition.
Yeah, nutrition.
No, I don't think so.
Okay, so yeah, that's the challenge for today, guys. So, what is either a new tradition you can create, an existing one that you've never liked but you would like to try and change, and also maybe it's with a different group of people. You know, I think that's one thing when it comes to the holidays. Some people like to think of the holidays as this amazing, joyous occasion, which is great and so much fun and always the thing I look forward to. Other people dread it and they don't enjoy it. They don't enjoy the people they're around. For some people, maybe they've even had some sort of negative experiences in the past around that time of year, perhaps with the family and friends that are supposed to be the ones that they love the most. Or maybe some people are just displaced and it's like, hey, I used to do this all the time with them, regardless of how I felt with it. Now I live across the country, so I can't do that. So I really like this idea of you creating your own tradition and saying, hey, you're taking responsibility, you're taking ownership, and you're going to take charge of what this holiday looks like for you. And that could be next week with Thanksgiving. Maybe that's sometime in December with the holiday months, or maybe you want to just celebrate Tuesday, the 16th.
Tarot Tuesday.
Tarot Tuesday, the 16th.
Taboo Tuesday.
Taboo Tuesday. Sometimes you just have to mention live streaming your sex with your wife, and she gets all hot and bothered.
It's so weird.
I don't know why that happens. I don't get it.
Yeah. Oh boy. So Reed, there's some things we need to talk about, buddy. Some explaining that needs to happen.
Oh, well, thank you, man. I appreciate that. Next episode we'll talk about boundaries.
Yeah. You mean I don't get to tell you how to live stream this?
No, you don't. Oh man. I guess cameraman?
No.
And with that, this has been Taboo Tuesday. This has been Tarot Tuesday. This has been Tradition Tuesday. It's whatever T word you want to come up with.
Yep.
I'm going to stop now before it gets any better. You see what I did there?
Yeah,
you
that
thought
was
I was
nice.
going to say worse.
I did.
Good classic humor.
Flipped it on us. Oh, man.
With that, have a lovely rest of your day, everybody, and go do stuff.